Hello again, I am Blunty, and this is Wild Hearts, and it's just slayed its way through its first weekend after launch. And while it might be a while before the publisher releases any kind of official numbers, especially for console, where one would expect the game to sell the best and have the highest player base, not that it matters because it's completely cross-play, Capcom, you do at least already know, thanks to Steam's much more open nature, that Wild Hearts is the 5th and 6th best-selling game there before its first week is even done. So, that looks promising. What isn't so promising is the broadly criticised performance issues, and I'm going to look at a couple of ways players have been suggesting and spreading around in the various forums and whatnots online, how they've fixed their performance issues, making wild claims about how much this has fixed their performance. And frankly, to me, they sound like absolute crap, because, humble brag, I know what I'm talking about, and these people half-assing their way through third-hand tech knowledge do not, frankly, as evidenced by the results I'm going to show you. So, let's frame up here, and then I will test these so-called solutions out for real, in the real world, and show you side by side just how effective, or indeed ineffective, they actually are. I made a couple of videos now on the console performance, comparing the 4K 30fps mode and the 1080p 60fps mode on PlayStation, and also the surprisingly large disparity of how the game looks on Xbox versus PlayStation 5, which, based on the comments on that video, almost everyone prefers the Xbox version quite strongly. And there are various issues and criticisms about the console presentation and the console performance and the console frame rate consistency, but today it's the PC's turn. And I know, I said in the Xbox and PlayStation comparison video that I wasn't going to do any performance testing on PC just yet. And that's because there is a known issue that is, as I speak, being fixed by the devs. Right now, they're working on it. Right now, they're testing it, getting it ready to feed out to us this week, and it will address this issue specifically. The problem at hand is the game, like way too many other games these days, has an issue multi-threading properly on PC, which means, in layman's terms, it's simply not using the CPU resources efficiently. It is a problem a lot of games have. I think most recently Gotham Knights was the one that was hit hardest by it. Thankfully, that was a crap game that I didn't wind up playing anyway, so the performance issues didn't really matter to me in the end, but I do want to play this game! And this keeps happening for reasons I do not understand. Heavily multi-threaded CPUs are extremely common in gaming rigs these days. We are long overdue for the devs to make this the priority performance target, because it routinely holds back performance on games, it routinely causes issues at launch, and it routinely gives them bad press. You'd think they'd want to avoid that. This issue is especially bad with Wild Hearts, as even people like me who run pretty high-tier rigs, in my case a Ryzen 9 3900X, a 12-core 24-thread CPU, teamed with an RTX 3080 Ti, a rig which can max out Cyberpunk at 4K 60fps, at least with the assistance of Nvidia trickery like DLSS, which the devs have promised they are working on for this game, but there is no timeline on that yet. And here with Wild Hearts, a much, let's be fair, a much less visually ambitious game than Cyberpunk, I can't even get 60fps locked basically no matter what I do to the settings or resolution. 4K, no. 1440p, no. 1080p, no. Not even at medium settings. And the reason I can't lock at 60fps no matter pretty much what I do, despite my hardware, is the issue is not, again, the graphics settings. It's not the hardware performance. Again, it is the CPU. That's where the bottleneck is. It doesn't matter how many threads you have, how fast your CPU runs, the game isn't using the CPU resources properly, and it is a bottleneck. It is holding back performance of everything else. Which is why the first so-called solution I'm going to test is, well, pretty obviously just idiot voodoo, really. You might as well make the claim that wearing a special kind of hat enables you to teleport. That's the kind of nonsense this is. The suggestion is to apparently change your audio settings from the default stereo to 5.1. And if you're wondering how this could possibly magically make the game run better, when we already know, and not just through guesswork, but actual words the developer has said in public, online, for everyone to see, the issue is the game not multi-threading properly. How could changing your audio setting to surround instead of stereo fix this? Well, as you can see, it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. Only an idiot would believe it would. For the purposes of comparison here, I'm running the game maxed out, fully maxed out, everything turned on, with no special voodoo magic tricks or anything. The only thing I've turned off is motion blur, because that makes me physically ill, seriously. And I don't normally run the game at these settings at the moment, because I found, using some mixed settings, which I will show you later on, but using some mixed settings while not solving the performance issue, because it won't, because that's not where the problem is, these settings do at least give me a bit more consistency in frame pacing, making the overall gaming more pleasant. So, magical insanity voodoo audio magic fix debunked. Let's move on to something which, to at least a half-informed PC gamer, looks like it might do something. And that is fiddling with the Nvidia control panel to force some manual settings underneath the game. In this case, they're recommending using the Nvidia control panel to cap the frame rate at 60, which, to be fair, some very, very specific edge case games, it does work better than the in-game frame cap, but not usually. Then they suggest fixing power management to prefer max performance, which for any knowledgeable gamer is already the default setting system-wide anyway. Then there's some fiddling with texture filtering settings, which once more, as a CPU-limited game, I can't imagine how anyone with the other half of the clue would imagine this could fix things, because it has nothing to do with significant CPU use. Then they're just changing threaded optimization on, which I'll come back to that in a minute. I know, just wait. Then they turn vertical sync on, which has nothing to do with performance, much less CPU use, but it does at least help with screen tearing for games that do not nail 60 FPS consistently. Now, what do you expect the result to be? Oh my gosh, it's a miracle! Look, it's precisely exactly the same. Nothing has changed whatsoever. Who could have guessed? Except, you know, anyone who knows what the hell they're on about, even slightly, instead of sucking advice from idiots on Steam forums without actually understanding what is going on, even slightly. So hey, let's roll back to that threaded thing. Didn't we say the game issues are to do with multi-threading? Well, because of that, some other people are copy-pasting this exact same set of magical settings, but suggesting forcing that off instead. Imagining that, well, if the game isn't multi-threading properly anyway, what's the point of having this setting on? We'll force it off. Surely that'll fix things. Well, imagine the absolute shock on my face when this too changes nothing. Nothing at all. Let me use a metaphor for you here. Imagine your 10-speed bike has some damage to some of the gear sprockets. This damage prevents you from changing up past 5th gear. Do you think that by manually adjusting the derailleur, so you can't even try to change past 5th gear in the first place, would change one single friggin' thing about how the bike performs? If you answered yes, you are the problem here. The only fix that will work is just waiting a few days for the patch to come out. The patch that changes the actual game's code, the underlying problem, which should make the game use your CPU hardware more efficiently and thus remove the bottleneck, pinching off performance for the rest of your system and thus letting the game also potentially use your GPU to much better efficiency also. And as for my specific settings that I have been using, well, it's a mix of high and medium. I'm showing them to you here. And again, while it won't and literally cannot fix the underlying issue, have I stressed this enough? It does at least make the game a little more consistent for me, with noticeably fewer hitches and big fluctuations. Nothing I do here can get me to nail 60. What I'm doing here is just giving me a little more reliability, more regularity from the performance. I'm still only getting 40 to 60 FPS. If I do uncap things or leave VSync off, I can go above that from time to time, but not regularly and not for very long. And these settings have been enough to carry me through more than 100 hours of gameplay since I got my review code about a week before launch anyway. But after the patch, I am expecting to be able to lock in to 60 FPS with high settings pretty easily, in theory anyway. We'll see how well the patch actually works. And these particular devs do have a history of not especially superb PC ports of their games in the past, but there is reason to hope. The problem makes absolute sense. The problem is not exclusive to this game. We've seen it in plenty of other games before, and it has been fixed and addressed before in other games with similar types of patches. So, see you later this week for the revisit, I suppose. When the patch comes out, we'll see for ourselves how much of a difference this actually makes in the real world. I'm betting it'll make a more significant difference than any of this idiot voodoo crap we've been looking at in this video. Because, you know, they're addressing the problem directly, where the problem is, you see. Thanks for watching. I am Blunty, and I will catch you next time. Thank you as always to the patrons scrolling up above there.